So it will be time to take a look at the next heavy assault cruiser. This is the Vexor 2, or if we would use the EVE Online terminology, this would be the Ishtar. Now, drones have been changed a lot in the last two updates. They have been nerfed, but at the same time they also have been buffed. First, they have reduced the drone velocity by 50%, but they have vastly improved the tracking, and in the last update they have increased the drone speed by 30%, so that should make them a little bit faster than before the speed nerf. Now, I have the Sleep Nano Core on this ship, and honestly, this Vexor looks very, very nice. Okay, let's take a look at the ship info, the rate, the description of the Vexor. Roll bonus plus 5 seconds, damage control activation time. Advanced medium drone operation bonus will give you plus 25% drone damage, plus 5% drone effective hit points, plus 3 km drone command range. Advanced cruiser command bonus will give you minus 5% inertia modifier, and the advanced cruiser defense bonus will give you plus 5% kinetic resistance and plus 3% armor thermal resistance. And the cruiser defense bonus is the new one. Now the Vexor has 5 drones, 2 high slots, 3 medium slots, 5 low slots, 3 combat and 3 engineering rigs, a solid cargo hold capacity, 16,118 overall defense. The Vexor 2 is a armor tank because of the skill bonus that you get on armor resistance. The capacitors 2,590 gigajoules, recharge time 540 seconds, 11.06 gigajoule per second is the recharge rate, can lock 7 targets, 85.8 meters is the signature radius, 303 meters is the scan resolution. Sender strength is 0.32. This is a little bit weird, should be much higher, but it's 0.32. Flight velocity 262 meters per second, warp speed 3 astronomical units per second. Overall, the Vexor should be a very interesting little cruiser, should have decent speed and overall very decent tank. Now on to the build. I have 636.01 DPS on the ship, 173 on the turrets, and 462.89 on the drones. Now I use medium missile launchers. The medium missile launchers are generally I would say the best weapon to use on drone boats. They can't miss, they don't use capacitor, and they do some solid damage. Scrambler, Nosferatu, and Web. For drones, I have Valkyrie drones, Republic Fleet Valkyries. They should be pretty nice. They are still quite speedy at 4 kilometers per second, and I will increase the speed later on with some modules and with some implants. This is the speed after the speed has been increased by 30%. 50 kilometer drone control range, 1 afterburner, 1 large armor repair, damage control, and dual adaptive invulnerability fields. I would say that this is, generally speaking, the optimal tank build for the heavy assault cruisers. Now on to the rigs. So I have 2 3P combat integration rigs, and they're focused on armor resistance as well as armor repair. Overall, I like this combination, should be running really smooth. And I have 1 2P combat rig, and this rig is for armor repair performance. Basically, fast repairs and more repair per cycle. 63, 67, 75 and 66% armor resistance on 8,761 hit points on the Vexor, 44,000 hit points on the cold value. Now, I have dual power routers and 1 capacitor rig. I've noticed that this ship has a lot less capacitor, a lot less power grid than the Caracal 2, so I was not able to fit 2 large modules on the Vexor 2. On the Caracal, I managed to fit a large Nosferatu and a large booster. On this ship, that is a little bit more difficult. Okay, now let me show you the current active values on this ship. You also have several different options for the implants. You can go with the thermal implant or you can go with the drone bombs. Depends which one you need. In my case, I actually have both of them, so I can swap when needed. Let me just quickly rearrange the modules. I don't like that the game always forgets my module out every time with every ship. Okay, let me do this. Okay, this looks a lot better. And the sleeper mode, I'll leave the sleeper mode on the other page. Okay. Adapt is on, afterburner on, and let's take a look at the maximum possible speed and tank. 66,000 hit points, 81, 83, 87 and 82% resistance, which is pretty solid for a drone boat. Capacity 1 minute and 49 seconds, 1153.49 meters per second is the afterburner speed, which is okay. A little bit slower than the Caracal, but still it's a solid speed value. Now the sleeper mode will give you extra resistance and of course extra recharge rate. Basically it will make your capacitor recharge a lot faster. So I will show you first the normal damage control active. 196,000, 94, 94, 96 and 94% resistance, and of course with the sleeper mode it should be about 97%, but we will see. Almost 100,000 hit points, 97, 97, 98 and 97% resistance, which is nice. You get dual damage controls, a pretty solid capacitor. The sleeper core can be used as a panic button. On these ships you basically have two damage controls, the normal damage control and the sleeper mode, which is also a damage control, but it will reduce the DPS of your turrets. However, it doesn't seem to be affecting drones, so drones are not affected by the sleeper core, which is interesting. Might be even more useful on this ship than on some of the other ships. Now on to the implants. I have the thermal circulation activated only because I can get extra armor resistance out of the level 15 attribute. So you can use this implant on all armor tanks. That means you can also use it on the Vexor 2. It will work very nice. The units are focused on afterburner speed, capacitor battery performance, DPS, and of course most importantly on armor repair. This is the combination that I use on most ships. It is, I would say, the best option for a vast majority of ships. Okay, let's dock and let me show you some more builds on the ship. Now you can use a capacitor battery instead of the one adaptive. This works really well if you don't have the... My apologies, just had to double check something. So this works well if you have the thermal implant, because the thermal implant does actually work as one extra adaptive. It does increase the resistance by 20%. So a capacitor battery with the thermal implant is going to be very nice. You will still get some pretty good resistances, and you also do get improved capacitor runtime. Now the capacitor on this ship is, I would say it's okay, but it does feel a little bit low, especially because you have to sacrifice the engineering rigs to have more power grid. 74, 77, 82 and 76% resistance, which is okay. The capacitor battery will be a little bit improved because of the general units that I have for this ship. You can technically fit a large capacitor battery with dual armor repairs. That also should work really well. However, you would have to sacrifice the Nosferatu for another web, because you won't have enough power grid for one extra Nosferatu. You can also sacrifice the damage control for the capacitor battery. This way you still have some decent resistance stats. Will look like using triple adaptive invulnerability fields. You can also use dual armor repairs. A lot of players would prefer dual armor repairs over a large repair, because they are going to be a little bit easier on the capacitor, and they cycle a lot faster, so they might actually repair faster. But in my case, I usually go and run maximum possible resistances, so that means I usually go and use the large repairer. Now, as you can see, I can't fit the Nosferatu, but now I can. I only had to sacrifice the missiles into normal C-type rapid missiles because of the power grid limitations. This ship does have very little power grid, and this might be one of the, I would say, downsides on the Vexor, because other assault cruisers like the Stabber and Caracal have enough power to fit 2 large modules. However, this ship seems to have issues with the power grid. Okay, well, looks like I can fit the heavy assault missiles. Okay, I did fix that. Had to sacrifice the build a little bit. Now have the large repair, adaptives, and the damage control. And this build does fit the heavy assault missiles or torpedo launchers. They're close range weapons. Should be really nice against cruisers, battlecruisers, and battleships. You can use this build with a medium capacitor battery as well. I like to use the damage control because of the passive effect and active effect, because the assault ships have a bonus on the damage control activation time. So it's very nice to actually use them. And you can use this build with the dual adaptive build without the damage control if you don't like the damage control. The tank will be a little bit less, but overall about the same. Now you can also use the drone damage amplifiers instead of the capacitor battery to increase the DPS. You can use dual amplifiers if you sacrifice the battery or damage control and one adaptive. And with the DPS build, you can use the drone bombard implant, the drone bombs. Now this implant has been changed quite a bit. Now you can remotely load bombs with one of the attributes that you unlock at level 30. The damage has been reduced by 100% from 400 to 300, which is okay. And further, one of the other level 30 stats, I believe, also reduces your DPS, the damage bonus, to 150%. It's this one, but it allows you to remotely load bombs. So with this level 30 attribute, you can remotely load, but you will lose some of the alpha damage from the bombs. And the units on the drone bombs are focused on maximum possible DPS, because this is a DPS implant. With DPS implants, you can go tank, but in most cases you can also go DPS. In my case, with the drone bomb implant, I went with full DPS. Okay, 819.15 DPS when the implant is active, but the thermal implant is going to be quite useful for PvP, for that extra resistance. But I guess the drone bomb implant can also be very useful to kill the target as quickly as possible. Okay, let's take a look at the active stats of the Vexor with this implant. Should be drastically changed. However, you still have the sleeper core, so you still have some form of defense even without the thermal implant. Okay, 819.19, 43,000 hit points, 65, 69, 76, and 67% resistance. A lot lower, and the difference will be quite significant. Okay, let's wait for the implant to load up. Will happen in couple moments here. Let's see if they changed the visual effect. Well, unfortunately they didn't, so you still can't really see the 300% extra DPS that you get from the drones once the implant is active. But you can see the DPS from the amplifiers. So with one amplifier 953.75 DPS, and with the second one it's 1090.80 DPS. You know, that's actually pretty solid if we consider the fact that this little ship has a pretty solid tank. So I'm honestly very happy with the current results on the Vexor 2 here. As after all, the drone modes do have a little less hit points and overall a little less DPS than compared to the other ships. Now you can also slap one micro updrive, but with a micro updrive the capacitor will take a significant impact, and the micro updrive can be used if you prefer a ranged build. Basically you will have to orbit outside of the weapon range of your targets, which will work really well for medium drones. They have about 50-kilometer range with the bonus. 50 kilometers should be more than enough to reach most targets. Now let's take a look at how this little ship performs in combat. So primary target will be the small ships first, and then I can go to the big ships. Implant is active, so I will do a lot more damage. Okay, the small ship got destroyed. Let's go after the next small ship. The drones go about 5.6 kilometers per second. You can use the omnidirectional controlling if you want to further increase the speed of the drones, but I would say it's not really needed. With the 30% drone speed buff, it should work just fine, even without the module. 5.6 kilometers per second is quite speedy, although in some cases you would want that a lot higher, so I can see why players would use the directional controlling. 2.1 kilometers per second is the speed with the micro updrive. Again, it does feel like a little bit slower than the Caracal 2, but it still should be pretty decent for speed tank. This ship has very nice mobility because of the inertia bonus that you get from the skills. Now one thing that I don't really like at the moment is the capacitor. It does run down rather quickly. With the Caracal I could easily counter that by using a large Nosferatu, but on this ship it's difficult to fit a large Nosferatu. Would probably have to go and swap the rigs for full power grid rigs in order to be able to fit the Mark 9 large Nosferatu. Now one thing that you should watch out for, sometimes the drones, as you can see, don't return. They can't really catch the ship, so you have to go to the drones and collect them. So that's one thing that you should watch out for if you're flying the drone boats. Now I did not pick the remote reload on the drone bombs because I like the 300% boost on damage. So if you click on the implants while the drones are out without the level 30 attribute that will allow you remote reloading, you will waste the implant. Basically the bombs will not be loaded, so you have to watch out for that. Don't click on the implant if you have the attribute for remote reloading, or you might waste the implant and you will have to wait 60 more seconds for the cooldown. Basically I have to recall the drones, reload and send them back out again. And honestly I don't really mind to do that because I already do that extra 300 DPS, 300 extra damage on the drones. In PvP that is quite significant because you can easily deal with a interceptor cruiser. Excellent defense against pirates as well. Overall, a pretty solid change on the implant and of course on the drones. Now with each wave of this mission I will try out a different build. I really like the mobility of the ships. The Vexor can be quite difficult to catch. I would say one of the more difficult ships to catch because of the inertia bonus. You can turn around pretty quickly if you notice someone warping in, and that will make the ship really difficult to catch. Okay, so I will quickly dock to change the build and then I'll be back in the mission. I will use this build with a capacitor battery. Now I will have lower DPS, but the capacitor should be in a much better state now.
Undocking.
Didn't really like seeing the capacitor below 70% without using the armor repair. That means that I will not be able to repair the armor for a very long time if I have to use all modules active.
Warp drive active.
And I also swapped to the heavy assault missiles. That means I will be orbiting at a close distance, and that means I'll be using a afterburner. So orbit will be about 6 kilometers, should be well within the optimal range of the heavy assault missiles. As always, I will go after the small ships first, and then I will finish up with the big ships. Now on the third wave I will swap to the tank build, and I will show you how quickly I can recover the armor with the large armor repairer. Should be pretty decent. It repairs about 2750 armor every 7 seconds. Honestly, that is quite impressive armor repair on a cruiser. Having the general unit for extra armor repair is really useful, and of course having the rigs for armor repair and resistance, a combination of both, is going to make your ship really difficult to kill. And that's what I like to do. A build like this is my worst nightmare when I hunt, because I know that the player who has a build like this, they have a good chance at winning. They have a very good chance at winning, even against multiple targets, because the sheer power of the rigs is making the ship pretty wild. And of course, if you combine that with player skill, yeah, you get a really difficult target. Okay, so far I have shredded the first couple ships. Now I'm going after the battlecruiser. Okay, drones reloaded. Let's launch them out. Now we don't really have to go and collect the drones. It's enough to turn off the afterburner for a couple seconds and then to recall the drones. Once you see all the drones docked, then you click on the implant and then you launch the drones back out. That will ensure that you have a decent clear time and you will not lose too much time in reloading the drones with the implant. Of course, that does require a little bit of practice. You might miss the reload a couple times, and that is okay. But once you get used to how everything works, it should run very smoothly. Now I haven't taken much shield damage, which is honestly to be expected because of the afterburner. The speed tank works really well on this ship. Now my apologies if you hear any scratch noises. That's my microphone that is a little bit broken, so each time it falls down I try to keep it up, but I'm losing the fight with the microphone, so I might just actually leave it down. I'm just afraid that my voice would be too quiet. So that would not be good. Now, the run boats have a very unique advantage over other weapon types. For example, the NPC ships don't really shoot at drones, and you basically can have about 1000 kilometers with them. The little feature where you can go out of the drone control range and have 4 out of 5 drones attacking a target is still there. That hasn't been changed like ever, so that little feature is still present. Is it like useful? I would say yes, it is, because it allows you to destroy the last target in the mission while burning away, in case there is someone attempting to scan your ship down. And of course, the AFK nature of drones is really good. You can use a lot of the drone boats AFK without worrying about the mission. We can also easily use them actively use them at about 250 kilometers, which is also something very nice. And overall, I would still say that they are the best weapon option for missions, although I used the drone boats for PvP back in the day with the RB cover tops, but nowadays I kind of swapped to the cannons, I swapped to lasers, and I don't really fly drone boats that often nowadays. Okay, let's test out the tank. So I will undock and go to the mission, and in this case I will do something that you should never do with your ship.
Undocking.
Never sit still, always move, always orbit, but for this test I will be mostly stationary without the afterburner, and I will take damage on purpose, just to show you how much this thing can repair itself with the large armor repair. Now this is why I have extra resistances. You can get extra tank with a large armor repair, but in some cases dual medium armor repairs do repair better. So it really depends on the situation that you are in, and it depends on the build that you have on your ship. And also take a look at the effects of the turrets coming out of the hull. That's very nice. The Vexor is really detailed, very nice looking ship. For some reason the game looks a lot better than it used to. Perhaps the developers are already preparing to launch the visual effect update. Not really sure when that will happen. It's in December. No idea when, but sometime in December. Okay, now I am within range. Afterburner is off. Let me quickly deal with the smaller ships first. The big ships will do most of the damage anyways. The shield is slowly going down. Now, can you shield tank this Vexor? Well, I wouldn't be using the shield tank, honestly, since I already have extra armor resistance from the skill per level bonus, so might as well expand on the skill bonus and go full armor. That's how the ship is meant to be used, and that's how I would use the ship. And of course, the armor repairs do use less capacitor than the shield booster, which is also a very useful feature. Okay, Now the ship is stationary, not moving at all, and I'm taking full damage from the Megatron Striker there, while still focusing on the other smaller ships. Armor at 54%. With the thermal circulation implant, I would have a lot more armor resistance, but let's see how this will hold out. Okay, 25% armor, damage control active. Should give me about 2 cycles with the damage control. That was a fat repair. So it repairs about 24% every cycle, which is really solid. And now armor is fully repaired, and of course you can use the sleeper core to improve the capacitor recharge rate. And now the armor is back at 100%. It's actually capacitor stable with the sleeper core active for 30 seconds. That is about 5 armor repair cycles, which means you can fully repair your armor without affecting the capacitor of this ship. Can be really useful in some certain situations, although in most cases, in my personal experience, I did not have to use the sleeper core on my stabber at all. Only in some very situational moments, that's where I had to use the sleeper core. But in most fights that I had, the sleeper core wasn't really needed to be used on the ship. Can be actively used if you have a large neutralizer. You can also use neutralizers on these ships alongside with capacitor batteries, and if you have the sleeper core, then you can use the neutralizer with the sleeper core, will make your capacitor stable. Although you will have only 2 cycles of the neutralizer, I believe, or 1 cycle, because it's like 24 seconds with the large neutralizer and about 12 or 15 seconds with the medium one. So can be used to quickly replenish your capacitor if it's low from the neutralizer. There is a lot of tactical moves that the sleeper core can be useful for. So, what would I say for the Vexor 2? Is this ship good? Well, I always say that the ship is as good as the pilot. So, this ship did impress me. I really like how it runs. Really solid for PvP if you have the thermal implant. Even without the thermal implant, it will be still solid for PvP. The drone buff that happened a couple days ago, yesterday actually, the extra 30% drone speed will drastically improve the way drones behave. The extra tracking on the drones is also going to change how they overall feel for PvP. Combine that and drone bombs, you really do get a very interesting ship that is going to perform really well. Now I'm trying to figure out if I will use a Vexor 2 for PvP. Currently I'm using the Stabber 2 for PvP, but there is a big chance that I will try out this ship because I already have the thermal implant, so I can easily replicate the armor tank fit that I show you here. We'll probably replicate the rigs as well, basically the same thing that I did on the Abaddon. And the mission is completed. That was a very nice run. You can easily go and use the ship for full DPS in high sec. That's not going to be a problem. I estimate about 2.6 thousand DPS with DPS rigs using the drone damage mods as well as the drone bombs. About 3,000 DPS, which should be enough, more than enough to clear high sec missions without a problem. For low sec missions, I would use a more tank build like on the Phantasm and on the Caracal, because in low sec, tank is going to be what's going to keep your ship alive against pirates. So, this was the Vexor 2, or Ishtar, depends which name you prefer. A very fun ship, honestly, a very fun ship, impressive performances. The buff on the tier 10 assault cruisers is so far one of the best things that happened to the game in a very long time. So with that being said, hope that you enjoyed, hope that you find the builds that I show you here useful, and I hope that the builds here help you at building your own ship. So if you want to support me, feel free to like and subscribe, and with that being said, stay safe, fly safe, and I'll see you next time.